The book I want to talk about is called Maps and Dreams, and it was written by a local author and anthropologist, Hugh Brody. The book was published in 1981, and it takes place in northeast British Columbia. The subject of discussion was the Dune-Zaa, also known as the Beaver People. Brody was sent to research their maps and territory while exploring the impact a new pipeline project would have on the area. When Brody got there, he met a man named Joseph, who was the leader of the community. Since Brody was going to spend a year and a half accompanying Joseph, he realized that his truck would be much more useful to the community than himself, and traded it in for a horse. This idea of usefulness and purpose is very important to the Dune-Zaa throughout the book, so keep that in mind. His presence and manner made the map fade into the background. At times, as he talked, Joseph made use of the map in the most general and abstract way. With no more than a slight flutter of a gesture, he claimed Quarry as his. Joseph turned to me and said, "We'll go to Quarry. Good country. You'll see." Joseph's maps were full of routes and trap lines, rather than defined borders. Joseph considered the map abstract, and used gestures when describing it, similar to how we would look at a map if we were giving a stranger on the street directions. The political concept of maps is to show how much land is defended and controlled by whom. In this sense, land is a resource that is prescribed by an entity who doesn't use it, yet still claims to own it. This is why the British came here, and then just claimed that everything was theirs. When Brody got there, he was initially shocked by the yard of Joseph, how cluttered it was with old farm equipment and tools. But when they needed a replacement piece for one of their rifles, the messy pile of equipment turned into a goldmine of spare parts. For us, we would see a tractor as something that moves and something that is used for a particular purpose, whether it be tilling soil or towing Christmas carolers. But many of us don't see any more than that. We don't consider the individual parts of the tractor and the many purposes they could be used for. This is because it is hard for us to step out of a world full of concepts, a world grounded in purpose. For us, the rain does not just fall, but it nourishes the plants and provides water to drink. For us, the rivers do not just run, but they act as barriers, serve as geographic landmarks, and potentially remind us of home. This is a result of a major difference in way of thinking, which I will touch on in a minute. The maps of the Dune-Zaa are created by hunters who dream of routes which would lead them on their next hunt. This shows how close of a connection the Dune-Zaa have with the land that they live on. As an anthropologist, Brody could appreciate the efficiency and diversity of the Dune-Zaa, and every second chapter is packed with facts and hard evidence in the style of a textbook. These are chapters that he dedicated to telling the sad but true history of the development of the Canadian frontier. In the odd-numbered chapters, Brody offers a personal account of his time in the Dune-Zaa. It allows us to get into the frame of mind of the Dune-Zaa, which is much different from our own. An abstraction of the human mind is called a concept, and is what most of us spend our time thinking about. This is contrary to the Dune-Zaa, who are primarily concerned with the physical, in other words, things external to the human mind. Stepping outside of the conceptual world is hard for anyone in our society, but especially university students. Being too wrapped up in concepts leads people to be more likely depressed and anxious. Being mindful of our physical environment has significant psychological benefits, and perhaps those could be correlated to the state of mind our ancestors had. People who live in the physical world are often creative, and tend to think outside the box, but at a certain point they become weird and unavailable to most of us. By listening to the stories on the hunt, it is hard not to get attached to the members of the community, and every second chapter starts to hurt more and more because the readers are forced to hear further the ignorance of the whites when establishing Canada. The fact is that the Alaskan Highway Pipeline had enormous benefits to the economic concept we have created, but the dreams of business people has caused so much harm and damage to the environment and reality that the Dune-Zaa live in. In a sense, constructing a pipeline on sacred ground is similar to telling a mathematician that numbers do not exist. Brody shows us that these conflicting ways of thinking has led to many of the issues and misunderstandings in the treaty process.
Created using Powtoon.